name is Janice Strutt. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Morgan's Caring Connection. And for today's empowerment session, we are covering what is advanced planning and how does it tie into estate planning. Today, I'm joined by Heather Holy, and we are covering again the advanced planning part of it. She's an advanced planning and aftercare specialist at Gunderson Funeral Home. And without further ado, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then we'll get started with the conversation.
Sounds great, Janice. Thanks for having me. Very happy to be here and glad that we connected over the summer, and all of a sudden it was like an immediate connection. So it's really great. Yes, as she mentioned, I am Heather Holy. I'm an advanced funeral planner with Gunderson Funeral Home, and I've been in the funeral business for going on about 10 years now, and I love my job. And everybody asks me all the time, how can you work at the funeral home? What a horrible thing. I would never want to go there. And again, I love my job day to day. It's about helping people. It's about helping people with a conversation that, let's be honest, nobody wants to have. But my goal is to help find peace of mind with families, help them find the peace of mind that they have these important things taken care of so they can continue living their life and such. So thank you for having me.
And thank you for doing what you do. It is super important to us as well. And somebody has to do it. So again, thank you.
Sure.
So tell me a little bit about what an advanced funeral planner is.
Sure. So there are many different roles at a funeral home. I do the advanced planning side of things versus a funeral director, who is one who takes care of families at the time of need. So when passing occurs. So my role there is to not only get out and educate, like we are doing today, on the benefits of why people would plan in advance, but to, again, really help them work through that difficult conversation. What are my options? What can I do? This is what my family has done in the past, but I don't know if that's really for me. So we kind of try to take a huge funnel and funnel it down as to what's important for not only the individual, but of course, those we leave behind. And then write those details out and really build a guide so that when that time does come for all of us, that someday it will, when that time does come, then our family has a guidebook, a way to start so that they're not sitting in the funeral home going hours and hours on end. I don't know what mom, dad, sister, brother, niece, nephew, any of those things wanted. So my goal is to help and build that guide.
Great, wonderful. Well, unfortunately, with our circumstances, we weren't prepared. And, this is one of the things that why we created Morgan's Caring Connection, of course, is to build the estate planning piece of it, which planning for your wishes when you're no longer with us is something that's super important. And we try to explain to people about, being proactive and instead of reactive. So then that way you're not forced with making decisions that you don't know the answers to, because, let's be honest, that's the time when you don't want to be making decisions. And so tell me a little bit about why you should consider advanced planning beyond what I just mentioned.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing too the information that you have based on your experiences. I think that can also be helpful. But people ask me all the time, well, should I be doing this? Gosh, I'm so young, I'm mid-50s, or, I've had people that will call me at 93 and, I really don't want to talk to you, but I feel like I should probably be doing something. So I have helped somebody who was very young, early 40s, a gentleman that had some terminal cancer, unfortunately, who did not want to leave this for his wife and two young children. And honestly, he laughed and joked about this rental casket his company always had, and that was the casket he was going to use. And we found so much laughter in this communication, and his wife was so thankful that he had done this in the past. And with somebody who's been, over 100 years old, well, I think I should probably get this done. It's probably about time. So age does not matter. You can do this at any point in time. It's always a good thing. You're really taking the time to put together one of the greatest gifts you can for your family, even for your spouse and or significant other, or partner that you've lived with for years to come. Think about all those things that you've done together for so many years. And so then on the day that you no longer maybe would be together, when that time comes, you're actually able to have done this in advance to find some peace of mind. So planning in advance to take that burden off of families. We can also take the time to go through costs. A lot of people want to know what is cost, and we do hear on the TV and such that average cost of funeral expenses is around 10,000, and I would say that's actually pretty fair across the country. But then again, there are also certain things that are less expensive. There are other things that are more expensive, and it depends on the different levels of involvement. And it's my job to really kind of help them piece together so that there's no surprises. That's the last thing that I would want for families at the time. So, planning to relieve the burden, we can look at costs. We can secure costs by some advanced payment options, and there's a lot of good benefits in that. Where at the time of need, most funeral homes will require payment upfront, and sometimes that's a financial burden on many, many families. So we do take the time to determine, do we want to pay for these things in advance? Do we pay for them at the time of need? Or maybe I have life insurance. Maybe that's my goal on paying for them. Or how can I pay them, kind of in increments? What works best for an individual financially? And so cost is another big thing that a lot of people are surprised about. So not only putting the information down, having it recorded at your funeral home is very, very important, not hidden in a nightstand drawer or tucked between the pages in an old phone book or wherever that may be. Having them in the right places is what's most important. So that's my goal, to kind of from start to finish completing that process.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, just to kind of reflect on my own, I had both experiences. And my dad passed away 10 years ago, was diagnosed terminal with cancer, was given less than a year to live. And I tell a lot of people, he left us truly a gift. And that is, the day after he passed, my mom and I had to make not one decision. And I'm telling people all the time, that is the best gift you can give people. And I don't care what anybody says. It is a burden to have to make decisions. And it's not just about the financial piece of it, although, yes, that's not fair either. If people haven't planned ahead and, there's the financial burden of it. But the bottom line is, in our case with our daughter, things were unexpected. So we had to make decisions that we didn't know because we didn't have those conversations. And that's not easy to do, because then you're always second guessing yourself. Is this what they want? Is this the way they wanted things done? And it's extremely hard. I'd like to say, in my mind, 10,000 is extremely conservative. Based on what we had with Morgan, the funeral, including her monument, which, okay, maybe it was a little bit bigger than what we needed, but it was $25,000. And
Mhm.
so, like, I sit here and try to explain to people, like you said, it can be inexpensive, haha, nothing's inexpensive anymore, but less expensive. But then, yeah, it can be more expensive. And in our case, Morgan was uninsurable at birth. So that's another thing that people need to consider is, what do you do if you can't afford something? I mean, like you said, there's payment options and stuff, and maybe someone else can help, and people do GoFundMe's and stuff. But again, that's not something that anybody wants to deal with, especially with today's economy. So, I try to explain to people that, again, as part of the estate planning process, if you know what you want and you can set money aside, or you can, like you said, buy a life insurance plan or what have you, then the burden may not be as much on the financial side. And again, it was nobody's fault. Morgan just was uninsurable at birth. And again, we didn't think about the fact that she would die at a young age. And that's the one thing I try to say in a nice way, and that is, there is absolutely one guarantee in life, and that is, everybody's going to die. It's just a matter of when. So when people talk about doing it at an early age, I don't know what's early, because, we just unfortunately attended a funeral of someone that wasn't even 2 years old. So, you don't know. And that's the other thing too, is having conversations about life insurance and planning, even when they're young,
Mhm.
because again, there's nothing that can tell us when it's going to happen. So enough on that note, but so from your perspective, tell people, like, what does a planning meeting look like?
Sure. And so to kind of tie back into the previous question that you had and some of the things that you mentioned as well, a lot of people are surprised that in a short amount of time when death occurs, there's over 125 different decisions that maybe need to be made. So when we do start the planning process, when we take the time to sit down and visit and get together, we can actually handle about 75 to 80% of those decisions. I mean, I have had so many people that once we have our plans completed have said, I'm so thankful I did this. I lost my husband 10 years ago. I should have done it a long time ago, but honestly, it was so unexpected. And I've been, I think, seriously in a fog for almost the last 10 years. And I barely even remember what we did for his
Mhm.
services. So the planning process will look like we begin to gather background information on the individual that we're planning. I always tell people, I'm not trying to be nosy, and of course, we're not writing your obituary, but it's important to know, of course, your name, your date of birth, your parents' names, where you were born. And the reasons for that is because much like a birth certificate, when we pass, we have a death certificate. So those things are recorded then onto a death certificate as well as with the state. So having that information ahead of time can be so much easier than asking your children, so do you remember grandma's maiden name? Things like that. Do you remember the date that mom and dad were married or what have you? Sometimes people come in and they're like, gosh, I can't even think of my mom's maiden name. How do I expect my kids to think of these things? So
Mhm.
um, people almost feel like they're being tested, when we sit down, but that's not the intent. The intent is really just to take that time and knowing that you have time to gather that. But we gather that information and start a complimentary file at the funeral home. Um, at Gunderson, we put together this final wishes organizer folder. So this is the
Okay.
nice little folder that I've kind of sent back with everybody. And so when you come in, we gather information. You'll get a printed copy of everything that we talk about. Then we go through pricing information. So talking a little bit about services. Have you been involved in planning funeral services for friends, family, otherwise? What was that 5 years ago? Was that 10 plus years ago? And in my experience in doing this, there's a lot more people that have never had to plan services for funeral services for others. So they're a little overwhelmed by all these decisions that need to be made. Sometimes people come in, they know what they want. Other times people know exactly what they don't want. I had a woman the other day and she said, well, if I don't look good, you make sure that casket is closed and you underline that and capitalize that and make notes. Or somebody, I can't stand my middle name. I do not want that in the newspaper for my obituary. So it's not necessarily if you know what you want, but also if you know what you don't want. And those things are really important, again, as that guiding gift for family. So talking through those details, gathering the pricing, and then just finding out again back to kind of that financial side. What are we thinking? What are our options for payment and such? And then I always tell people there's never any cost to sit down and visit with us. We're more than happy to do it. My goal, and in the years I've been doing this, it's important for me to work at the pace of the individual. Some people are a little more ready than others. Some people are going to take a little bit more time. And I've found that when people are ready, then that's the good time. It's not something that you can ever really push on somebody. And unfortunately, we've had those circumstances too, where I've met with families. I'm over at a Grace Hospice, and mom is literally on her last few days, and the kids are yelling, why have we never talked about this? Why didn't you tell us anything? Those are not the time to try to do some of this planning. Those are the times to be with your family members. So if you're young, you're healthy, you feel good, hey, I don't want to talk about it, but let's just get this off my to-do list. And with the new year ahead of us, it's a great thing to think about, to get that off the to-do list. And that's kind of what that whole process looks like.
Absolutely. So I do appreciate that. Is there, like you said, are there specific questions, like a questionnaire that you have that people might be able to refer to that maybe we could have on our website or something?
Sure, I can get you the statistical page. I mean, it says statistical, but it's really kind of your personal wishes. It's really name, date of birth, parents' names, occupation, hobbies, other things to think about. Maybe I was a veteran, so I was a member of the American Legion, or I was a nurse. Met a lot of nurses lately, and I don't know if these nurses know, but there's these great tributes called the Nightingale Tribute. It's a final ringing of the bell, a rose ceremony. Maybe there's a Mason that wants a Masonic type of service, but We want to try to incorporate all of those things. But yeah, I could certainly find you something to put on your website so people can kind of just get a good overview of, here's some of the things maybe I should think of, or that important, background information.
Right.
Um, the only reason I hesitate with that a little bit is I don't want people to think it's homework, though. Then it goes home, it goes on the table. So that is part of my job, and I always share that with people. I'm here to kind of talk through things, but I know people like to have an idea on what to expect as well.
Well, and for us, tying it in back to estate planning, that's really the foundation of what we do here and support people through. And I don't think a lot of people understand that this part of it is part of estate planning, leaving behind your wishes, what you would like, what you don't like. And so I think it's super important to, again, kind of set expectations for people. Families like ours, when they're working or dealing with a special needs dependent, don't have the bandwidth, and that's why we support them through the processes. There are a lot of big decisions that, like you mentioned, right out the gate, nobody wants to do this in a normal situation, but when you're dealing with your estate planning, this is the time to be proactive through it. And I going forward, I'm trying to be better about setting expectations with families that, it could take 3 to 6 months to do your estate plan. Estate plan or advanced planning is a part of that. And here are some of the things that you're going to need to think about. I think it's, again, the unknown, I think, is part of what keeps people from doing things. And if you give them the tools and the information, and it gives them an opportunity to process it and take the time to research things and not be put on the spot, I think that helps kind of ease people's minds. And that's kind of why, again, absolutely, we don't want things to feel like homework, but at the same token, it's super important to do it. And I stress, do it while you're doing your estate plan. Here's why. First of all, I never knew what I wanted to do. We're not a religious family. I'm from Illinois. Would I want to be buried here if I were to be buried? If so, what would that look like? Where would I go? My wife and I have had conversations about that because she too is like, I don't know. And I finally figured out what I wanted to do. And it honestly, going through a funeral home is like the backup plan. I actually want to donate my body to science, but if they reject me, then I'm cremated, and then what? So I mean, like, it's not just as simple as what people may think. So it does require some thought process and some planning. But in her case, and the reason I bring this up is with the trauma of losing our daughter. We did our estate planning 10 years ago, and now she's not in the mindset to consider doing something for herself. So we're still stuck with the what if something happens? We don't know what she wants. And so again, this is why I feel like when things are good, when things are happy, those are the times to make decisions like this. And yes, it's tough and nobody wants to do it, but I can guarantee, and I'm sure you can too, that more times than not, people are like, I'm so glad that that's taken care of now. And I don't have to, think about it, and I don't have to worry about it, nor do I have to put my family through it at the time when it sucks the most. So yeah, I'm assuming it's the same for you.
Oh, very much the same. It's so funny. I mean, the common thing I get is, a good old handshake when you walk somebody out the door, and thank you very much. I feel a little bit better, but no offense, I hope I never see you again. So and I'm totally fine. I'm like, no, maybe at the grocery store or out at a restaurant or something like that.
And they act like they don't know you. No,
yeah, just right. No, I did see somebody this last summer at a parade, and they're like, oh, you're the funeral lady. You're the funeral lady. But again, you do bring up some great points. And two, just to kind of maybe tie this a little bit back to Morgan's Caring Connection and a lot of the families that are seeking out to you to look for helps with their estate plan. Of course, I'm not an attorney. You've got a lot of very well gifted attorneys in your network there, which is awesome. But there's things like the WISPAC Trust and the Special Needs Trust, and people are, I think, maybe sometimes surprised that those can be used to fund a trust or fund a funeral service for their child. So if, heaven forbid, they were to predecease their child, and then what's going to happen after the fact? The other thing, too, is that whether they're once the child is 18, what happens to the guardianship, if something happens when the child passes away, guardianships, power of attorney documentations, all those things cease. And so then who's going to be there to make those decisions? So there's a really good document called an authorization for a final disposition. And I've worked myself with that and with a lot of estate attorneys that actually give people at time of need the actual representation to be able to kind of help move those processes forward a lot easier than, oh my goodness, legal next of kin. Well, that was this person. Now they're no longer here. So there are so many great things and ways to tie in the estate planning. And two, I always tell people, you're having these conversations. So if you've just met with your estate attorney, then you should think about considering the funeral planning as well. Or if you're meeting with me for funeral planning, when's the last time you talked to your estate attorney? When's the last time you actually opened that will? Oh, 15 years ago. Well, do this planning together because you're kind of on this road and it's all really fresh in your mind. And it's a good opportunity to just review it. And then again, peace of mind for everyone.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, is there anything else? I was starting to think just for a second, if somebody is not sure where to start, like what should they do? Should they do some research online? Should they call you? Like you said, you'll do a consultation. Like, tell me, like, how do they get started?
Sure. Honestly, research, a lot of people like to research things, so that's great. You can go to our website, gundersonfh.com. It's got a lot of information, but I am more than willing to just take a phone call and, Heather, I don't even know where to begin. Okay, well, let's chat on the phone. Let's do a Zoom, or if you want to come in and sit down, then let's just talk through some things. Like I said, the important thing for me from what I've learned in my experience is that I think working with the individual at their comfort level to make sure that this is exactly what they want. So I have had people that come in and know exactly what they want. I've had people that come in and know that don't have any idea on where to start or what to do. And maybe when they come in on where to start and what to do, it's not maybe starting with me, but it is going to the attorney or it is going to the cemetery. And so I feel in my best interest of caring for families and individuals that I'm there to help guide them, and eventually full circle will complete everything together.
Yeah, well, this is all great information. I really appreciate you taking the time. And like I usually say, and I'll say it again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to Heather at Gunderson Funeral Home or reach out to Morgan's Caring Connection, and we'll try to connect the dots to support you in any way that we can. And again, Heather, thank you very much for your time today. And I look forward to covering some other topics of conversation that people might not know the answers to. And happy holidays.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Janice. Appreciate it. Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you.